Much for coming. I'm Samantha Kimple for those. I think I know everybody on the call so far. Samantha Kimple from Creative Sonoma, our program officer. So I manage our grant programs and our professional development, which this falls under. We thought we'd get together in a peer-to-peer type format to really learn more about what our colleagues have been doing during these times, especially virtually, but also to be able to network a bit. And so we may continue this even post-pandemically so that we can continue to forge those connections and make the best use of the collective knowledge, which is really pretty impressive between our different organizations and artists that have managed to survive and thrive, and or at least be nimble at these times through the challenges of the pandemic and multiple natural disasters. I would like to introduce, she's just gone off camera, but Debbie Yarrow is here, my colleague helping us with the tech. So if you have any questions, you can send a chat to Debbie, and Kristen Madsen, our director, is also here. Thank you for being here. I'd like to turn this over. The way that we'll do this format, I think a few of you have attended these before, we'll have Nico do a presentation on his work and then the work of his organization and his work. And then we'll have a brief discussion between he and I, and then we'll turn it into a group discussion where we'll ask you if you have similar examples to share, or you have questions or ideas that you'd like to throw into the hopper, and we'll send out a follow-up at the end. So I'd like to introduce Nico Kinzen. He has been with Transcendence Theater Company for 3 years in his current position as the Director of Education and Community Engagement. He let me know before we started that they have been able to serve over 10,000 youth and adult participants in their virtual education program, which is amazing, and over 70,000 in virtual artistic program. So I'm going to turn it over to Nico to tell either more about the theater and then move into what you've been doing with virtual arts programming over the past 10 months almost.
Hi, friends. I'm so happy to be here. Good to see everyone's faces. I'm just going to go into a little spiel here for, just Transcendence in general. We're a professional theater company based in Sonoma, California, right? And we produce these Broadway musicals and Broadway-style concert series with artists from Broadway and TV and film. And specifically what I'm here to talk about is Transcendence EDU, right? Which is our education department. And so, the mission is to provide equitable access to the arts. And the way in which we do that is our in-school programming, our community programming, and our advanced training programming, right? We talk about, we want to design a system for the skimmers, the swimmers, and the divers. So divers are the full musical theater nerds, which we love. And now the question is, how do we do that virtually, right? So, and we've also added this year really heavily to supplement income is the addition of our corporate offerings, right? Our on-camera workshops, our virtual team building events, and creative direction for live and video productions. I knew all those productions in New York City in somebody's basement for $2 would pay off. Anyway, my name is Nico. I'm the Director of Education Community Engagement, as Sam said, just bringing my full self to the table. I'm a producer, a performer, a creative, that loves chubby dogs, bougie food, and the outdoors. I identify as a Latinx theater maker and use he and him pronouns, and my objective is to uplift the human spirit. So hopefully, as we have these discussions today about technology, which makes everybody want to hopefully it'll be a fun discussion that we can have about that. My professional background, I have 10 years as a stage and screen performer based out of New York City. I now live in Petaluma, yay! But internationally, nationally, in productions of West Side Story, Sister Act, TV film credits of Boardwalk Empire, commercials for Pepsi, Xfinity. I have written, produced, and directed short films, web series. I've also led corporate training workshops for multiple teams at Google, Sotheby's, and other executive teams throughout the North Bay. That is all to say, when it came to this virtual kind of transition in March, it was a muscle that I had already been using for about 6 years. And so going off of that, just to start where our education programming, kind of to resonate with Sam said at the beginning, since March for our education programming, we have a virtual program participants for live and pre-recorded content of now 11,034. And for engagement, what it looks like online are comments for our education programs that are like, great job, Jesse, if it's our virtual like teen intensive, or like really love this program. Comments, we have 798 comments on our videos. And then for Facebook reactions, which are like a thumbs up, a heart, is 284. So going into this question that Sam had asked, like how have we developed virtual programming and what tech did we use? I'd like to go before that and say why pivot? Why have we done this, right? And I think, going back to the true intent as for art is connection, right? And we wanted to use technology paired with our virtual programming to continue our connections with the communities that we serve. And going forward, as we go back in person, we have to continue to offer our real life, person-to-person experiences partnered with digital relationships, right? One builds off the other. And really the thing that we heard, we talked to teachers with our programming. The mission we were on in March was community and joy. How do we bring those things into the virtual world? So we were dedicated to those, and the staff that we have and the education staff, I could not scream it louder from the rooftops, have been champions since March. It's been very cool. And so now we go into the question. So that's kind of the why for connection and joy, and then how we have done it, right? That's the crux here that we're all kind of trying to find out is there's 3 ways in which we've created virtual programming. The first way is pre-recorded content. The second way is live streaming. And then the third way is video conferencing. Right, so I'm going to break those down and give some examples of how we've done that successfully and not so successfully in those 3. So our pre-recorded content we've done professionally and what I say bootleg in like our rooms with the ring light and your iPhone. But we've done our pre-recorded content that we record in advance and we edit and we put it on like a YouTube link, right? We've done it at our at-home studios, as I call them, at an actual film studio, throughout Sonoma County, and then on location, right? Sonoma Square or outside in a way. The tech we've used for that is, iPhones, ring light will save your day. We have gimbals, which you attach to your iPhone. And then it is a balanced system it's a handheld and it's a joystick that then controls the camera so you can move around, which are great for museum tours or which are great for what we've been implementing with real estate with Sotheby's, teaching them how to do that for real estate tours now that people can't tour in person. And the editing software we used for that was simple iMovie, right? We've really become kind of proficient at iMovie now. And if not iMovie, and if you have not access to iMovie, Movavi, which would be for a PC equivalent, Movavi. And a non-professional example of kind of our pre-recorded content is the first pivot in March. What we did is we were about to go into schools and we had our arts integrated curriculum. And with that, our teaching artists set up an at-home studio with an iPhone and a tripod. And they created our Learn at Home program, right? Which was 15 25 to 45 minute arts integrated lessons for English language development. And to date, that has over around just under 4,000 views, and a program that was anticipated for just about 150 students at Dunbar Elementary in Glen Ellen has now been used, just under 4,000 times. And the participation we can track the data from Sonoma County, but also in LA, Chicago Public Schools, Boston City Public Schools, and Mobile, Alabama. Wow. And the way we know that is we can, track data on YouTube, but also a lot of our programming online has participation. So they'll send in photos to be featured on our Instagram, or, they'll send it to their classroom. We'll send a picture of students and what they've created. And then it's a way to build community through creating art, right? A professional example on what we've created for pre-recorded content in ways that we've supplemented income is we created 4 25-minute arts education videos for Google families. So Google had a virtual Take Your Child to Work Day, and they asked that we would be one of the arts providers. And so we took 4 of our kind of lessons and we made them all Google-fied. And then we went into a studio, socially distant, which we have all the protocol for that, which is fabulous now. And we were able to create those videos in a professional setting. So there's one that's when you're at home and you're pre-recording, and then there's the most extreme kind of what we've done professional level. And then I have examples of those that I can show later. But moving on, so that's our pre-recorded content examples. Now we have our live streaming, right? Where you do Zoom to Facebook Live. And this is great for performances, right? A webinar style with interactive chats and responses. We've also done YouTube Premiere. That's where we do our artistic programming on, right? So we upload our virtual shows that we usually do in the summertime. And then you can choose a selection on YouTube that says, air it at this date, at this time, as if it's a performance, right? As opposed to just having a live link that anybody can watch anytime, is to make it more of a, Friday at 7 p.m. and everyone's watching it all together to mimic a live performance. So that's another option. So Zoom to Facebook Live and YouTube Premiere. One example that we've used for this live streaming is our virtual kids camp and our virtual teen intensive culmination performances. So they spent the week in Zoom with their Broadway professional teaching artists. And then we had a concert at the end. In the concert, we did Zoom to Facebook Live. And so that was a great way for parents to see it, grandparents, family members. I mean, the engagement on that for, I think it was like 75 students. Yeah, 75 students total with our kids camp and our teen intensive, but we have over 6,000 views on those videos because everybody sent it out to family members that usually can't attend, right? And then the comments, we have about 800 comments on those videos and engagement from parents in real time saying like, go Kelsey, love that song. And we also sent it to all of our performing artists in New York City, right? Because I think a big thing about Transcendence is, the interaction between students and our professional performers and them showing up to support the younger generation. So that was a cool way of, encouraging students online. That really was a cool thing for community. So that's one example of the Zoom to Facebook Live. Now going into our third mode or method, we have video conferencing, which we're all familiar with. Google Meet, Zoom. This has been a really great tool for interactive teaching and really engagement, right? For our virtual team building events, our in-school curriculum. And this is what we've been using primarily for our arts integrated curriculum, where 2 teaching artists of ours Zoom into classes, 1 classroom 2 times a week for 30 minutes, right? So we've been doing arts integrated curriculum for English language development for grades 3 through 5. And then for grades 1 and 2, we've been doing a virtual recess. So it's all about community and bringing recess back into the children's learning day. So that has been really cool and really finding the ins and outs of how we optimize Zoom for teaching, right? And I think a lot of our teaching artists are finding out ways now for virtual classroom management tools, right? We've seen a lot of Zoom chat bullying that detracts from learning. So we've changed that to now students can only, chat directly to the facilitator, right? We've taken that privilege away from students using that chat to bully each other. And then, you can put kids on mute if you'd like, or there's a student that might need individual attention. We send them individually to a breakout room with another teaching artist to give them additional help, right? So looking at how do we make this the most personal experience while online, understanding that different students learn differently. So that's kind of the 3 ways and just 3 examples in which we've pivoted. And then the next question that we were really dedicated to was impact, right? What is the actual impact past just creating content? And that came about data collection, which actually has been a huge blessing for us, is that Google Forms are our best friends, and video testimonials, Zoom polls. I mean, we have more data now than we've ever had, which is really exciting. And really, being able to video and record and take notes on and have our teaching artists review their lessons, right? With peer observers that say, hey, I think you could have handled this situation like this, or hey, using them as case examples for virtual classroom management and how we learn from them. So that's been really great. So those are kind of the three ways in which we've pivoted, I guess you could say, and really come into this new renaissance of, our intent is to serve locally, but why can't that same programming serve nationally? And that's what we've seen. And as we go back to an in-person experience, how can we create programming that when AJ and Erica, our teaching artists, go into your school, that how do you have a virtual takeaway lesson that night if you want to supplement what you've learned in that daytime, right? So we're really looking at how do these work in tandem now? How do they talk to each other? And then how do we build relationships with other schools to pilot a virtual program? And then maybe we Zoom in live 2 times a week, right? Looking at different bundle packages that might work with schools to say, what works best for you and your teachers, and what are they willing to do? And we can create a package for that, virtually and in person. So that's all of kind of explored in this time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great overview, and I appreciate it being broken down by the different tools. And I might ask you to spell some of the tools that you mentioned that I'm not familiar with, and we'll send those out to everybody at the end, or you can email them to me. We like to ask the same questions to our presenters. Basically, what worked the best? What would you change? And will you continue to do this kind of work? So I'd love to hear from you, really, what are, maybe you talked about what worked, and there's some great outcomes that you mentioned, but are there 2 to 3 things you really think have contributed to the successes you've had? And then any kind of advantages or unexpected positive outcomes. We'll start with the positives from virtual programming.
I would say I'll start with the unexpected outcomes. Unexpected outcomes was we assumed, or I had assumed, that our youth were at their limits with tech, right? That they don't want to be on a Zoom anymore, right? They don't want to look at a screen past their school day. When in reality, the thing that we continue to learn time and time again is they don't want to be in front of bad content, right? Because right now what's difficult is YouTube, the quality is so high that sometimes we're trying to compete with that, right? And really with our budgets, we can't compete with that. But when it comes to presenting our own individual material, we have to say, how do we level up our production to engage students the most? Knowing we're in this digital platform competing with, these professional quality video producers.
Right. That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
I think that applies to anybody. We have a real wide range of people on this call. We have other professional performing artists. We have performing musicians. We have art centers, like the quality content. People are going to want to find that.
Phase 1, right, was we've created this thing, we've transitioned online. And then if you look at data and you look at impact, you're like, oh, I think the second phase is we actually have to move into movie quality video production, depending on our demographic of who we really want to serve, right? And how do we do that? And I think the things that we've learned is do what you can in your own capacity and then outsource the rest.
And that's really interesting, because we talked about virtual galas last week for fundraising, and both organizations said, get a professional videographer. And so that seems to be a common theme coming along. If you want to do, I think a lot of us are going to continue, Creative Sonoma will continue with virtual programming after the pandemic. So this might just be a new skill that we want to develop.
Yeah.
Any other top items you would say contributed to your success?
I think top items, other than my full belief is collaboration happens at the speed of trust, right? I think Kristen, you taught me that phrase. I think you've said that before, and I like have it like tattooed everywhere now in my brain. But that idea is get a team that you can trust, especially in a global pandemic, is the only reason we were able to pivot so quickly by producing, 6 videos that first week of shutdown in March, is because we had a team that we wrote the script, I did the video production, I sent it to the video editor, and creating a production timeline that gave boundaries to people and made them set them up for success. But it's only if you surround yourself with a team, right? And then especially now as we go into this production video content, we exclusively work with Link Creative, which I cannot recommend, more highly. They're based in Santa Rosa, but Bruce, who has a daughter who she was in our kids camp one year, and he reached out and said, how can I help you pivot? And it just turns out he's like the most incredible human being / videographer. So Link Creative is a name that if you are struggling with who can help you along in this process, he is not only just a service provider, but also a coach and a mentor in how nonprofits move online, right? And has tiered approaches to say, you're a small nonprofit with a small budget. Here's the things you can do in your capacity. If you really want to do a bang up job, a huge, incredible gala, here's also this other opportunity, right? So Link Creative is
ringing endorsement.
There you go. Yeah, I cannot.
There you go. And this is part of what we're hoping will happen is we kind of share the other resources that we've discovered in our community to help us all do our jobs better.
Yeah.
So now I'd love to hear about what you perceive as your challenges and how would you improve or change programming in the virtual world as it's going forward.
Yes. The challenges is, I think, tech. I think everyone would agree is technology. It's every single day, it's like either my laptop wants to die, or once I open up Dropbox, it's like my laptop has been poisoned. But I think it's appropriate tech, right? I think as we look at our 2021 budgets, we really had to look at what tech do we need to really level up production, right? And really serve. I think that's going to be the biggest switch that we see when it comes in terms of space, right? I think a lot of people's budgets are space, when I think that's going to switch to space means a film studio with proper filming technology, right? And so we had to get everybody a corporate Dropbox account, everybody, corporate Zoom accounts, unless you're on a team that you can share, but, equipping your team with the tools to succeed, because I think, and then, data sharing when it comes to, we film these hours of content, here's an external hard drive. Now, how do we get this external hard drive in a socially distanced way? And the way that we did it is we film everything, sanitize the the portable whatchamacallit, file share, and then saran wrap it, and then we would meet. It literally was like, I'm sure with
a detective movie. Yeah.
We wrapped it and then we'd leave it on the editor's hood of their car, and they picked it up, they sanitized it, and they put it in their car, and they drove to Santa Rosa. So I'm sure like much sketchier than it is. I'm like, no, it's just education videos, I promise. But file share, right? And then we started to develop the language later on that Dropbox, you know what I mean? But how do we do this now better? So I think tech teleprompters, I think when you're teaching, a teleprompter is something that we're going to be investing in, right? With our teaching artists that are either reading scripts, it's to save them from this. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's if they can read it in real time like this, you know what I mean? Just thinking of the small tech things that are really going to improve focus on our students, right? As opposed to direct. I think the other challenges, marketing virtual programming. The number one thing I hear for arts providers is the marketing of their content. And I think that has been the biggest challenge. And I think there's multiple factors in there in identifying who are the gatekeepers. Do you need gatekeepers? And do you coalition build and go from the ground up? And going back to relationships, the biggest way that we've seen impact is relationship. We want to move to a different school. We had principals calling other principals at other schools to recommend our program and to set up a 15-minute meeting, right? Because marketing on social media for students, I think, is very difficult. You're really marketing to parents. And I think that has been the greatest thing, is keeping in mind who you're creating marketing material for, and how that kind of works out for max impact.
Mm-hmm. So to follow up that, in the post-pandemic world, will you continue to utilize or integrate virtual components in your programming? And if so, how?
Yeah. Great question, Sam.
I know, right?
We have moved, in part of moving our content online for free, attached our lesson plans, English lesson plans and Spanish lesson plans, right? Understanding that a parent at home who's the primary provider for their at-school lesson might feel more comfortable facilitating the lesson in Spanish, right? So there's that equity issue that we're kind of facing there. Those same lessons we have moved online to a site called Teachers Pay Teachers, and you can buy any of our lesson plans for $2, essentially. So we are moving to able to offer these to teachers as a resource for arts integrated curriculum. And then with that, we are moving in 2021 to really build some, we use our office space now as film studios for our teaching artists, and everybody has their own studio that they go in and they film, or they do their Zoom lessons, right? So setting them up with equipment, the proper kind of, as opposed to this being the background, really getting some fancy schmancy, either Transcendence branded or something that's really engaging to students where they know, oh, this isn't just regular school. This is the, where we have beginning of all of our Zoom lessons, we have students create their art studio and that they step in and they step out at the end of it. So it's creating a different space in the virtual world for students, that they know it's different than their math class, than their ELA class. Like, you have stepped into the realm of arts integrated curriculum, get ready to party kind of type thing. So doing that with backgrounds, and then, all of our content, 2021, we're looking to bring it into a professional film studio to offer up to local teacher hears as supplemental kind of education than our zoomed in, but then also nationally as well, how we can offer as a tool for teachers that might want to show it, you know what I mean, and then do a takeaway packet lesson in their classroom. We're also looking at packaging our virtual shows that we did in the summer and creating an experience with opportunities for students' lesson plans as a virtual field trip, right? Where they can watch a Transcendence performance, and then there's attached packet of questions, or activities for teachers to facilitate in their classroom if they're interested. And then hopefully what we're seeing is that can begin the relationship, and then hopefully we can start to continue to create a working relationship where we might zoom in, and then next month we might send 2 of our teaching artists into the classroom, right? And then really, whatever comes first, the chicken or the egg, whether we go in person and then the virtual compliments, or go in virtually first and then the in-person compliments. So yeah, it's definitely
really interesting.
We're gonna go after for sure.
And I have a couple questions I'd like to pose to the greater group. Before I do, though, I'd like to know, what is your most critical piece of advice you would give to someone starting virtual programming for the first time, or moving into the virtual realm?
Yeah, I think the greatest thing that was ever said to me about video programming is, if you don't get it on camera, it didn't happen. So if you planned for it, if you wrote the script, but if you didn't film it properly, it didn't happen, right? So I think when it comes to video production, I think the most critical piece is planning. And the way that we plan video production is pre-production, production, filming day, and then post-production. And so producing those things, what needs to happen in pre-production: script writing, coaching, camera rehearsal, lighting, right? All of that, planning that out so that when you get to production day, all your ducks in a row, so you feel set up for success and you capture exactly what you intend to capture. And then you get as much content as possible. and then you really have kind of the roadmap with your script and, you know, the footage that you picked up to then go into editing, feeling confident that you got enough material.
That's a great piece of advice. And I could see that being true no matter which organization, whether you're, I know we have a touring musician on the call. We have people that run film festivals, you know, or you're teaching adult art classes. It's a different way of working than we're traditionally used to. This has really forced us into this mode of production. So
Totally.
it's a really interesting time.
Yeah. And I would almost say critical. What we've done is we do market research to say who, not the competitors, but who's doing really incredible content that we want to, that is inspiration,
Mhm.
and then reverse engineering that.
Mhm.
So, you know, they had 5 shots in their videos. How do we mirror that? And then 5 shots in pre-production, we know we have to have an in-studio day, we have to have a lifestyle day, we have to have B-roll, you know what I mean? And then making sure that those are scheduled in a production process so that you have everything to go to the table in post-production and feel confident that you have all of the material.
Yeah, one local theater company also commented that we are now not just performers, we're broadcasters. And so even their youth who are doing online shows had to learn a new skill in being on camera. And what does that mean? And so that's just a really interesting time. So I'm looking at Kelly from the, you know, I want to go take a bookbinding class at one of our arts centers. I love the idea of a teleprompter for the teachers and us as we host conversations all the time. I think those are really interesting tools.
Yeah. And I think the last thing, Hamza, I think a lot of people, you know, we've been doing, Sotheby's reached out to us and said for their realtors, right? What we call Muggles in the act. If you're not like an actor, we call them Muggles, anybody who's not an actor. And so the Muggles, I think, have a difficult time being on camera, and they ask, what could you provide? And so we've designed a series of workshops, on camera voice and body confidence workshops, right? To really give the tools as on camera actors, how you present yourself professionally on camera, right? And I think those things, there's simple tips and tricks that you can resource share, right, with other organizations to say, hey, would you guys mind zooming in and coaching us super quickly on this presentation? Or would you guys potentially direct one of our studio tours, right? Like, you don't have to do it all in-house. I think this is a great time for partnership and collaboration. So I just want to offer that. I think a lot of people get really down on themselves that, you know, technology is beating them. They don't quite have the tools or pre-production process. These are PDFs I can share, right, with you, because we already have it charted out. Why reinvent the wheel of how you should do your pre-production process, how you should chart it out, right? What are the 3 things you should know while talking on camera, right? And I think that has been the greatest thing is we need boundaries to create and feel confident, and reaching out to the organizations that are doing it well that you see and asking them, what are the boundaries you've created for you and your staff so you feel confident? Because I think if we were to give that and give that as a gift to other organizations, I think that they could just serve better. And I think that's the resource sharing that we're looking to, kind of those collaborations with other organizations, because I think right now is the time for organizations to move online and move expertly online. And we all have to be dedicated as a county to do that, just to serve better.
Right. So I'd love to open this now to anybody that has any questions or would like to contribute their own experiences with either virtual experiences of managing events. I know Clark has a gala coming up or did have, and you're doing a lot of virtual programming. One thing that I picked up that I thought was interesting, Nico, was the reach from that you have obtained with people picking up your lessons and taking them afar. And I realized for the first time, I could gift an experience from one of our arts centers to my mother in Ohio and have her receive the little package of materials and then go online and, you know, so people can share that. Like, man, I really love this class from HCA. I'd love to gift it to someone. So I'm curious about if you feel like sharing with people on the line, is that something that you are considering, or are you hoping to go back to in-person classes? Are you also considering this virtual continuation of programming?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for anybody in the group.
Oh, for anybody in the group?
Yeah, I'd love to hear the thoughts, or
Yeah.
if you just have any other questions for Nico or anybody else in the room, in the virtual room. I saw a question from Bill.
One, just a couple of things, I guess. So I'm really hoping, I mean, we've been doing sort of half and half. We did about half of our teaching has been virtual. And the other half we did in person until we couldn't anymore. It's great. We did all the social distancing stuff and we reduced the numbers of kids to make that possible. So that worked pretty well for us. Also, because I've sort of dipped into video over the last 25, 30 years, I'm not that interested in doing it. I sort of knew that 25 years ago. Fortunately, we have some tech people on staff that do video, which is great. And I'm sort of leaning on them to do the audio and the video tech work, and that's been working out really well. But I must say for us, I'm really looking forward to us going back to what I'm considering to be sort of full in-person, sometime later next year. So that's sort of where we're headed. And I think the honest truth is, I think this feels like a stopgap to do the stuff that's online.
Yeah.
It's great to use it when we need it, and clearly we've got. For me, for filling in, it's great. Do you know what I mean? So I've got kids that are missing, or I've got information that we have to do, or meetings, or all this sort of. That's fantastic. But I mean, again, for us, doing a rehearsal in person is why I did this, and I think it's also the skill set that we're also trying to teach. So as much of that as we can get back to, that's what we're hoping to do in the future.
Yeah.
That said, I think one of the interesting things we've been doing, we did a fair number of master classes because we were able, because of this, to pull people from New York and far away that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So that's been great. And they worked with the kids and, they got that information. I think one of the things I'd be interested, Nico, in getting an idea from you is this idea of getting responsiveness from people in the Zoom meeting. And even with the kids, when I know, I'm saying I know, but I feel like they're taking it in, and, when you talk to them, they're responsive when you actually, call them by name and ask them a question and they get on. But there's something about kind of going dead, during the meeting. And so I try to talk to people that are doing our master classes beforehand, in case they're not used to it, just to say, listen, you might not be getting a lot of response back, and it's tough. So I wondered if you had any sort of guidelines that you specifically gave people, or that you asked, for kids, at least. I'm not gonna ask the adults, but do you ask kids in terms of responsiveness? To be honest, for us, the high school students, the biggest thing was not the texting, which is interesting to hear that you had that. It was they text each other on the phone, right? So they have a completely different communication system going on. And I finally figured out what that looked like when they were actually texting on the phone. So that was great, figure that out. But that's what I realized was going on, where there were two communication streams happening. And so I just had to keep up with both of them at the same time. But I just wondered if you had guidelines or ideas that you threw out to people.
Yeah, I think a thing that's been super successful is recognizing that in your students is what are the different ways in which they communicate. And then as opposed to like in class, we're like, put your phone away. It's like, no, this is good. We want to capitalize on this. You love to text. And our teams, when we did our virtual programming throughout the summer, loved a chat moment. Loved a chat moment. It was our number one tool for engagement, right, in communication. And so to encourage that, right, and to design parts within our lesson plans is, we follow the kind of universal design for learning. And so it's building an on-ramp for all the different learners, right, to say, if someone really feels confident with their video off chatting, then encourage that, right? Or video off and just chatting, with their microphone on, encourage that, and then visually, if someone doesn't want to turn their microphone on, encourage what are the responses that they can do visually, right? And so right now what we're finding out is there's kids that are just at different places in their kind of social emotional kind of world right now. And so how do we build on-ramps on so they feel confident that like, hey, I don't have to have my video on, because we've seen kids where there's 3 kids behind them on a couch, then they're watching, a third grader's watching their 3 younger siblings while they're in class, right? But to say, you don't have to have your video on, but if you want to write in the chat, you're part of the script, you know what I mean? And set them up for success and know that that's justice worthy, You know what I mean? And I think really encouraging that for students, because everybody's at a different place right now. So I think that's the thing that has been super successful for us, is designing those in the lessons, right? Hey, we're at this point in the lesson, feel free to chat, you know what I mean? To chat, to turn your microphone on, to turn your video on, give me this if you feel that. I think designing those multiple points for students and encouraging them that that's also successful. Yeah.
Awesome. Bill has asked, is there a video time length that works best for communicating a single subject in a pre-recorded format?
Pre-recorded, we have found via YouTube analytics, right? You can see how far someone makes it into your video. 25 minutes is usually capacity. You know, unless it's super engaging and there's a facilitator facilitating the video. But if it's a student is at home or something like that, and there's a lesson, 25 minutes is max. So we view them as that would be the main course. And then what are the snacks, right? So there's a 5-minute thing with an attached workshop. So they watch the video for 5 minutes, they do an exercise, and then it's write your script, and then, you know, write your script, design your character, and take a photo and send that in. Right? So looking at what's the main meal that goes up to 25 minutes, and then what are the snacks that you can send off to students that are like little activities.
That's interesting. I could see that working for adults as well. I know my attention is waiting these days. It's a challenge. Do we have other questions? Hi, Eki.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to share sort of a little bit about my experience as a performing artist. It's a lot easier. I don't have to lug gear out to shows. It's really nice.
That's nice.
There's no, 3-hour check-in, load in, and then, the show, and then, getting back home. But definitely has forced me to kind of think outside of the box. One thing that I never really anticipated was, because the fact that we're all more plugged in, for better or for worse, it has led to an exponential amount of opportunities in terms of being able to find audiences globally. I've, played for folks in Japan and Ireland and England, and it's a beautiful time to be able to do that. I love what you said, Nico, about the snacks and how to offer it. One thing that I've found is just trying to translate what I do live virtually. So I love to talk with my audience. It's fun. I mean, I get to know them and vice versa. So before my shows, and generally, I've done shows 7 minutes. I've been booked for shows 7 minutes long to an hour long. And the sweet spot is about 30 minutes. And that is real tight. But what I like to do is just hop on about 15 minutes earlier and engage those folks who are already present and just get to know them. And that, just like, if you're in any kind of social situation and you're kind of, who can you link up and talk to? And that helps, because usually helps with my nerves, but also those are the individuals that will usually ask questions and get the ball rolling, because one person starts and then it tends to be a ripple effect. One other last thing is, as you mentioned, Nico, is having different forms of communication simultaneously. So I did one show, and it wasn't through Zoom. I can't remember the platform, but I was being interviewed. There was a moderator present, and the conference attendees were on Slack. So they were texting each other. They were texting me questions that the moderator was reading for me, that I could then present back. And this was all then streaming on YouTube Live. So it was like 4 platforms going on at the same time, but it gave a real sense, at least to me, of participant engagement, because people again could text real time, and it felt more of that, more of an engagement rather than me just talking at them. So
I'd love to know, Eki, are you planning to do, once we're back post-pandemic, would you continue doing a mix of in-person and virtual shows?
Definitely. And I'd probably gear towards more virtual, so, but yeah, definitely. I definitely want to continue.
That's great.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Love hearing about it.
Incredible thing. Becky, I can't believe we've never met. I'm putting my official email in the chat right now. You have to email me.
Yes, I definitely will.
Also, that's for everyone too. Please email me.
Sure.
I think something that you mentioned that's really crucial is when you are in person, you have a longer time to build trust virtually. If it does not happen in the first 5 minutes, you do not have their attention. So the way in which we design our lesson plans, and this is even true with our corporate virtual team building events, is in 5 minutes, in those crucial first 5 minutes, design a portion, either an icebreaker. We do Zoom Macarena. They love a Zoom Macarena. It's never have I ever. So it's like, do this if you've sneezed in your mask. Do this if you've only worn plastic pants for the past 6 months. But forming trust in the first 5 minutes is super crucial to how far you can go in an hour, right? In the first 5 minutes. So that's something that's really crucial that you brought up. So thank you.
Fantastic. Really interesting. Isabel, I heard that you have a question.
Yes, I think I heard you say something about Google. Did you receive any like tangible support from them in terms of like software or any kind of technology help or support?
Money. That helped. Technology support. We are connected with the woman who runs internal events. So we do. We've done, I think, 8 virtual team building events. And I think this is another thing too, when organizations are looking back to go in person, it behooves us to expand virtually, because corporations now are virtual. They're starting to tip over either permanently or for 2021 in whole, right? So we have about 10 more scheduled of virtual team building events for Google. Right, and that's just another way that we can supplement income with our services provided. That kind of, and what I call it Robin Hooding, right, taking from corporate, and then that same money gets funneled into our free arts programming and our scholarship fund. But looking into Google, they have not given us tech that we got like a discount, if you will, with our Chromebooks that are for our mobile unit artsy book program, which we've preloaded with free arts content and that we send throughout Sonoma County. So, but creating partnerships in that way for Google Education, we're slowly starting to open that door a little bit more and see where that kind of corporate help comes in for sure. But we haven't quite yet figured that out.
Okay. Thank you. Just because we're thinking about, I think when virtual reality programming, just because when we had anthropologists come from the Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City for the summer in the migrant education program, and they brought these like virtual reality glasses, or like they're like cardboard things, and you put your phone, like your smartphone, which everyone has nowadays, in there, and then you put it, and they're like virtual reality goggles or lenses or something. And so some of the programming on there was just incredible on what they were designing over there. And so we're like figuring out how to incorporate some of that in our work, in our programs. And but obviously we're going to need support when it comes to the VR technology and things like that. So
Isabel, are you at all connected? Do you know Allison Frenzel?
no.
She's amazing.
And like I'm a face person, so maybe if I see her face, then I'll be like, oh wait, yeah.
You may recognize her, Isabel, if you saw her.
Yeah. I probably
she has invited me a couple of times to, there's a monthly meeting between like the high ed tech developers, right? So it's Adobe, it's Mac, it's Google, it's head of the ed tech that doing that, and that's the exact group that you should be talking to. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, maybe we can link up like one-on-one after.
Love that. I'd love to connect you with her, because that's the
sounds
person
great.
for sure. That would be an advocate for you for that.
Awesome.
I've already thought of about 5 different workshops we need to hold because of this conversation.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question from Bill. Can you recommend an online or brick store for video and editing equipment, like the Apple Store? What would be a realistic budget for a nonprofit to consider? If Nico or anyone else here has created any kind of programming, what kind of budget have you dedicated to?
Can you give me the question one more time?
Sure. Can you recommend an online or brick store for video and editing equipment? And what would be a realistic budget for a nonprofit to consider?
Yes. So we have tech equipment links that I can send you.
That'd be great.
We have gimbal recommendations. We have ring light recommendations. We have what is it? Gimbal, ring light. Those are two, and those are the smaller, and that's about $250, right? That you can allocate, which is what we would consider your at-home kit, your most professional at-home kit. Now, if we're talking about a step up from that, like a DSLR and that kind of equipment, I think you're looking around $2,500, right? To have something like that, that's a little bit more professional, runs on an SD card, you know, with, you know, a ring light behind it, I think is really, can take your video to the next level. And then if you have iMovie kind of type thing. And then the next step up from that, I would just outsource. You know what I mean? So, and I think and what we do if you're a nonprofit is we have an intern apprentice program. And so throughout the year, we moved it kind of year round now, is we will start to sculpt from the high school. And we're very lucky that Sonoma Valley High School has an Art Quest and, you know, these great video photo programs. We will bring them along and they'll work with our professional photographers, videographers, but then we continue those relationships and they become our kind of staff video editors as we extend their contracts. So beginning those relationships, because I think college video editors now might as well be professionals because they're so crazy and talented. So, and then, you know, there's that step that you can, which is just a couple $100, you know, for a video that you're looking at. But then if you're really looking at professional, there's different tiers. You know, I can't recommend Link Creative enough. They're very budget friendly for nonprofits, but they you know, it's going to cost a pretty penny if you're going to do some really exquisite work.
Great. And then there's another local resource, both of our colleges, the junior college and SSU, and SSU's Center for Community Engagement. They recently have been asking for short-term projects this spring for students that need that kind of, they need to do hours, and it's everything from web editing to video, you know, video editing, all of those kind of things. So I will send that link out as well, because I think they're still, we just got a message that they're still looking for projects for people in the spring. So. Okay, I feel like it's 12:55. I'm exactly on our agenda. That's amazing. I was just like, what? Oh, any final questions before we take off? We'll do a kind of, I'll get the list of links from Nico, and I've written down, I have about 3 pages of notes I've taken down of different suggestions people have given. We always love your feedback. So if this is really set off some bells about training you need or people you'd like to connect with the community, please respond when I send out our wrap-up email. We always love to hear that from you. Thank you so much, Nico, for willing to be here and talk about all of the programs you've done. We'll send the link to the EDU, Transcendence EDU, which has been a great website. I really was impressed when it came out. And thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your time, and good luck with all of your various programs and tours and festivals and education classes. And before we go, we are about to take our registration live for a series we're calling Conversations in Equity. And it will be with our board member, Cindy Barrios, who works for the YWCA, and in conversation with Alegria de la Cruz from the County of Sonoma, Magali Tellis with the City of Sonoma, Santa Rosa. I'm looking at Nico and thinking of Sonoma, the town of Sonoma, City of Santa Rosa, and then Jose Soto with Luther Burbank about equity and what our arts leaders in the community need to know from the county perspective, city perspective, and an arts organization's perspective. That'll be 3 Thursdays in January. So watch for that. And we look forward to seeing you again, and happy holidays, however you celebrate. We hope it's safe and happy and well, and we'll see you in the new year, if not before.